Hey soccer fans, this is Nick reminding you to check out Sports Spider. If you're tired of searching multiple websites for sports news, SportsSpider.com has you covered. They collect the latest articles, videos, and podcasts from around the web and organize them by your favorite teams. If you want to stay as updated as possible on the Chicago Fire or any other team, hit the link in the description to check out SportsSpider.com. Hey soccer fans, welcome back to the Feed the Fire podcast. I'm your host Nick. Rare recording on a Saturday afternoon. It's August 3rd. We are recapping the Chicago Fire's latest Leagues Cup match against Toluca, that 3-1 loss from this past rainy Thursday night. And as I've mentioned in past episodes, I have a family vacation coming up. So we're going to have a little bit of an irregular recording schedule for the next couple 3 weeks or so. And then, when the school year starts and we're all back into a nice routine, then we'll be cranking out the content for you on a regular basis. But we're going to discuss that Toluca match, kind of what it means, what sort of takeaways, a little player evaluation, and then I'm going to close the episode out with some thoughts on the U.S. men's Olympic team and their, good but disappointing. Can we have both things here? Anyway, we'll talk about it in the second half of the show. As I mentioned, housekeeping, we're going to have a little bit of a different schedule coming up, so I appreciate you bearing with me and listening through that. If you do want to reach out and engage with me, I am on social media across all platforms as Glasshouse Soccer. But again, if I don't respond as quickly as I normally do, that's just because I'm on vacation. I got your message. I'll get back to you. Also, I want to quickly recognize from the Toluca match, it was great to see Daniel Friedman, someone who I interact with on Twitter. We walked right by each other and kind of did like a double take, and I was like, "Hey, Daniel, what's up?" And he kind of waved back, and I appreciate him not just thinking I'm some crazy person. So, Daniel, great to see you, man. Thanks for the wave. Also, shout out to Tio Luis, who has been a listener of my podcast, Feed the Fire, since the beginning, who has been a follower of my prior show, Sons of a Pitch, with my old partner, Mike. So, Tio, thank you for sticking with us. It was really nice to go out, shake your hand, take a couple pictures, meet your friend Ernie while we were all there. Really enjoyed getting to talk with you. Hope you enjoyed the match. Speaking of the match, 3-1 loss. Not the best performance by the Fire, but that's not completely unexpected given all the circumstances with the team, and we'll get into that. But my initial thoughts going into this game were, how much was the weather going to impact the match? That was my first thing, because we had all these storm warnings. There was a little bit of rain right before the match, which actually delayed the opening of the gates. They opened the gates at least a half hour later than they were supposed to or scheduled to, and it really created a bottleneck in and around the stadium. I had never waited in a line that long to get into a Chicago Fire game, but everything had been backed up. People were trying to get there at the right time or get into the stadium ahead of the rain, but security wasn't opening things up. I do want to remind everyone that this is a Leagues Cup match, so the Chicago Fire as a club, Toluca as a club, MLS as an organization didn't have as much control over a lot of the different aspects of this game. Player availability, media releases, coverage, that sort of thing. I don't know how much that affected the security that was there. It was the usual Monterey security, and I didn't see any incidents at this match, though I did hear about one where when you had to evacuate the stadium at halftime due to lightning in the area, I had heard there was one section where security was not letting people out of the stands, and it created a huge backup, and people started to get pushed and almost crushed together. So something to keep an eye out is, always know where there's two exits, especially when you're in a stadium like that. And hopefully this is more of a Leagues Cup mandate and issues with them than it is the Chicago Fire and MLS, but that remains to be determined. We'll see if there's any coverage or news that comes out about that later. But the match itself, a 3-1 loss. I did predict that the Fire would lose by 2 goals. I didn't go out and say it was going to be 3-1 because I could have seen it as a 2-0 or a 4-2, some wild event like that. But it ended up being a 3-1 loss to Toluca. And again, the Fire did not have their full complement of players available for injury, time off, illness, whatever it was. We know that they are not placing a lot of stock into the Leagues Cup. They are looking to make a run to get into that play-in position at the end of the regular season. But also, look at Toluca. This is their first time playing in a Leagues Cup match this year. I forget if they played last year at all. But they had a lot of home fans. Like, the whole stadium was red, whether it was fire red or Diablo Toluca red. It was all red. And they really played off of the crowd at times. Definitely more leaning to Toluca. But it was a great vibe. And I actually kind of like having a complement of away fans in the stadium because it does get the crowd into it. Now, I can't say I enjoyed, having like 70% of the people there cheering for Toluca. But like when you're in Soldier Field and the opposing fans are up in that little corner, yeah, they can kind of make some noise, but the noise kind of gets lost. And there isn't that back and forth. At this match, the home fans wanted to out-cheer the away fans, or I should say the Fire fans wanted to out-cheer the Toluca fans. Like, it really helped build an energy in the stadium, and I really enjoyed that. So hopefully, the Fire continue to sell home tickets and create a better atmosphere. But if they do get some away fans, that can really pick up the energy in the stadium, and it was a lot of fun. Now, also Toluca, you got to remember, this was their first group stage match in Leagues Cup. So they still have an upcoming match against Kansas City, and they realized if we beat the Fire, we're through. At worst, second place in the group. So they also had a lot to play for in their opening match of Leagues Cup, and they get the win. Koutsias opened up the scoring in the 8th minute. Another beautiful Gutierrez to Koutsias goal. And we're going to talk about that connection and if it's something we can build on. But it was a great through ball from Gutierrez. Koutsias splits the defenders and slots it past the goalkeeper. Great way to get things going. They kept momentum for most of that first half, but then it was in the 30th minute, Toluca gets on the counter and pretty much scores the exact same way that Koutsias does. Angulo slips right through the defenders. A lot of people were saying he just blew right by Salquist in that center back position and is able to slot it home. Then Ruiz gets the go-ahead goal at the end of the first half in the 45th minute, and also gets the nail in the coffin, if you will, the security blanket goal. That third one on just a crushing header. He gets up on a corner kick and just outjumps everyone. Like, I think his head may have been higher than the crossbar, and he was coming down when he made contact with the ball and just drills it into the net. So that was the third goal for Toluca in the 66th minute. Now, recapping the lineup here for the Chicago Fire, they started in a 3-4-3. Spencer Ritchie in net, who he's had a couple of really good games in Leagues Cup, but just, when you're giving up a lot of shots, when you're giving up a lot of close range opportunities, you're going to give up goals, and that's what happened here. I don't think any of the goals that Kansas City or Toluca scored could be placed squarely on him. Maybe a little better footwork, maybe a little better position. I don't know if you want to be nitpicky, but he came up with some big saves. Otherwise, it could have been a lot worse result for the Fire. From left to right, your center backs, Pineda, Salquist, and Suquet. Your midfielders, Justin Reynolds, Kellen Acosta, Gaston Jimenez, and Fabian Herbers. We did see Reynolds kind of dropping back into a defensive position. They almost shifted into like a 4-3-3 defensively, or 4-4-2 defensively. But Reynolds did try to get forward a little bit more and really held himself well in this match. Your attacking players, Gutierrez on the left wing, Koutsias as your center striker, and Haile Selassie as your right winger. But as we know, Gutierrez would drop centrally, try and pick that ball up from Acosta and Jimenez, and then drive it forward and try and find Selassie or Koutsias, or maybe Reynolds or Herbers, depending on how they were. Herbers, I don't think, performed very well in this match. It was a very average performance. Then he just kind of did his thing, and did he pick up? No, he did not pick up the yellow card. I'm thinking of Fede Navarro. That's who I'm thinking of, the substitutes for the Fire. Fede Navarro comes in, and within the first 2 minutes, just drags down and hacks one of the Toluca players and picks up a yellow card, gets a little scrum going. But we did see Christian Kofi come in, Tom Barlow, Andrew Gutman, Wyatt Ohmsberg, all come into the match, all get some minutes. Nice to see that the bench and the depth and some of our regular starters, like Gutman and like Federico Navarro might be, depending on how Jimenez and Acosta are feeling. Nice to see those guys getting their legs back under them and getting some minutes. Chihos was on the bench. Mueller was on the bench. Aragoni was listed on the bench. I did not see him. Maybe I missed him in warm-ups because we were out walking the concourse, talking to people, getting some beers. But they were all listed as on the bench as well, along with Javi Casas. And those are the rest of your field players there. So that was the lineup. That's what we were looking at. Nothing surprising here. We knew the Fire wanted to use this as almost I'm going to call it a second preseason, like a mini second preseason, to get some young players some minutes, evaluate some talent. So I think that's what you got to take away from this match, that this was a mid-season preseason, if that makes any sense. And the Fire were just looking to get some guys healthy and then get some minutes and evaluate some talent from their younger players here. Looking at the statistics, the Fire had about 43% possession, 11 shots, 5 on goal. So again, offense lacking. 3 block shots, only 384 total passes. So they did not have the ball a lot of this game. We saw that both as possession percentage and just on the passing numbers. They had about 85% passing accuracy, according to MLSsoccer.com. So most of their possession in their own half of the field, high percentage passing. Now, Toluca similarly, 437 passes, 86% passing accuracy. So these teams looked to, it was a very fast game. Maybe it's because I was sitting in the 12th row behind the Fire bench instead of my usual second level at Soldier Field. You know, the game being played at Seat Geek, I think the organization did a really good job of transferring the season ticket holders into good seats at Seat Geek. Like I said, 12th row, just behind the Fire bench, off a little to the right. I really enjoyed it. So maybe it was because I was closer to the pitch, but it was a much faster game than what I had experienced watching from Soldier Field. Maybe that's playing Liga MX competition, that it is a faster pace in a lot of times. But anyway, that's just my observation, right? My little moment there from being at the match, and why these possession numbers or these passing accuracy numbers were so high, because they had to play quick, they had to play it around the back, and they had to play probably some safer passes than they would have normally played against maybe some MLS opponents that they had a better scouting report on, perhaps. The Fire end up with 7 corners. Toluca had 11 corners. That seems crazy to me. Hey, maybe I was on the concourse for a few of those, but that seems wild that there were 18 corner kicks in this game. Fire with 8 crosses, 1 offside. They got out-dueled in the air, 9-5. Here's the problem. Their expected goals, 0.8. So 5 shots on goal, 11 shots total. That's less than 10%. That's like 8% chance of scoring a goal, right? Nope, I can't do math. Anyway, the Fire get Koutsias' goal. That's probably the highest XG on that one. But still, not creating high percentage opportunities, a common theme throughout the season. Richie was credited with 8 saves. Defense had 9 clearances, 10 fouls committed, 2 yellow cards picked up by the Fire. So that is the lineup and the stats from the match. Did it match up with your eye test? Is that what you saw? Did you see a team that kind of gave up possession, or was kind of sitting back when the other team had the ball, playing a little conservatively, looking for counters? Is that what you saw? Maybe we'll have to look into some of the advanced stats and see. One of the Twitter accounts, the X accounts, MLS Statistics and Analysis, showed the Chicago Fire's passes into the final third. Again, they were looking to go more to the wings. But remember, when they played direct, when Gutierrez drives forward and picks his head up and finds Koutsias, or in past games, finds Kuipers, finds anyone running into the box like Selassie, when he's playing those balls into the middle of the attacking third, that's when the Fire are getting goals or getting really good shots against the opposition. They've been playing too much to the wings, and they've got to change their tactics and style. And one of the things that I had a couple people write into me, including our friend Ryan here on the show, he said, next season I want to see Kuipers and Koutsias up top, dual strikers. I believe and hope that those two with better training and tactics will work really well. And we have seen the Fire have better offensive outputs from that dual striker set, not allowing the defenders to bracket Kuipers, so to say. They've got to pick 1 or 2 to cover. And if Koutsias and Gutierrez and Kuipers are going to be kind of that attacking trio in the center of the pitch moving forward, they get a little chemistry. They work a little 1-2. They work a little feign. I don't want to call it a false 9, but you instead of maybe a dual striker, a 1-and-1 striker, however they want to rotate around, I think that could create a lot of havoc for MLS defenses going forward. The only kind of caveat to that is you're losing a midfielder who can help provide service. But we have seen if the only person they're serving the ball to is Kuipers, then the defense is clamping down on him. Some other observations from this mid-season preseason. Justin Reynolds, he looks ready for more first-team minutes. He got his first minutes with the Fire first team against Kansas City in the Leagues Cup. He gets his first start for the first team in this game against Toluca. That loan in Lugano really did him well. The one thing that I look for now, and this was something I first heard a couple seasons ago about Tajon Buchanan, the former New England Revolution player who was transferred to a club in Belgium, who is now getting first-team minutes with the Canadian men's national team. When a player realizes that they are at a higher level than, say, the defenders around them, that switch goes on, that confidence goes up, and you see them utilizing their full strength and skill set. And this was said about Tajon Buchanan. Once he realized, hey, I'm better than a lot of these defenders, he was taking them on one-on-one. He was using his speed, he was using his strength, using his technical ability to make really good runs down the wing for New England and for Canada, getting himself into good spaces and working with his teammates. So I think that's happening with Justin Reynolds to a certain degree, where that time over in Lugano made him realize, wow, like if I can train and hang and find success with this club in Switzerland, then I can absolutely do it with my MLS club and do it to MLS and Liga MX competition. So I think you saw a little bit of a step forward from here, and considering the banged up back line, I'm looking for him to play a little bit more, if not a lot bit more, of a role in the Chicago Fire defense going forward. And speaking of that, this is kind of the long-term effect now. We looked at some of the short-term stuff with the Fire over last episode and this episode, getting healthy, making a push for that playing game. Who is our center back of the future? Who's going to anchor the back line for the Chicago Fire? I feel like Chihos might be out of contract, or maybe have another year. I should have looked that up coming into this recording, but I don't think he's got too much more time left with the Fire. I feel like he might want to retire and head back to Germany after a decent tenure here in Chicago. He's getting older. He might need some more time off. I don't think he can be your week in and week out starting center back in the 2025 season. We know Carlos Terán wants to move to Europe. He's got to improve in a few areas. We've talked about him in the past. But even if he does become one of the best players in MLS, or best center backs in MLS, he's got the physical tools to do it. I don't think he'll be happy if he spends another 3 or 4 years here with the Fire. I think he wants to get to Europe in the next year or two, and heck, maybe even compete for a spot on the Colombian national team. So I don't think he's going to be the center back when the Fire are poised to start winning trophies. So that leaves us with Olmsberg, a 28-year-old center back who very smart, very physical, but a bit of an injury history. Maybe not that breakout speed or that recovery speed that could help him pick up some of those speedy forwards when they get by you. And that also leaves us with Tobias Sahlqvist. So how would you feel, hypothetically here, Fire fans? Ask yourself this question. If you want to email me your answer or find me on social media, you can contact me, glasshousesoccer@gmail.com. How would you feel, say, Chihos retires, goes back to Germany, or, gets like a hometown transfer back, and Terán gets sold, maybe for a couple, $3 million to maybe a championship team or a low-end Premier League team. Maybe he ends up in the Bundesliga, mid to low tier table team for, a couple, $3 million or so. And then we're left with Sahlqvist and Olmsberg as your two starting center backs for your opening match of the 2025 season. And you bring up, is it Connex, the center back from CF2? And those are your three center backs to start the season. How would you feel about that? And I say this for two reasons. Number one, because it's a real possibility, and we need Olmsberg to step up and Sahlqvist to take a step forward. But also, there's been a lot of talk like, we just need a DP winger and a DP midfielder, and then we can build out a little of the attack and we're good. Well, we might need to also sign a center back. That is also could be a very big position of need for the Chicago Fire this offseason. So just one more thing to keep in mind when we're evaluating the front office and the Fire's potential going forward. They're not just 2 or 3 pieces away. They're like 5 or 6 starters possibly away from being a competitive, finishing top half, top third of the Eastern Conference. Speaking of Sahlqvist, I really like him individually. I don't know much about his personal history, but there's no scandals coming in, and he did something this match that also made me like him a lot more personally, and I'll tell you that in a second. But I liked the signing when he came over. He does need to develop a little bit more speed, a little bit more awareness and reading of these runs by the strikers. Getting used to the MLS game. Hopefully he's one of those guys where he gets a full season of MLS under his belt, getting used to the organization, to the travel, to the league, the style of play that can change so drastically from week to week in the MLS. Getting used to the schedule, having come from the Danish league right into MLS, and hopefully he can get some time off this offseason, get back into the weight room, get back to training, and have a really good second season for us. You saw a lot of these Toluca strikers run at him and run past him. There was nothing he did to really put some fear into them or to force them to try and have other avenues of attack. But I do like him. I think he could develop into a decent pairing with Ohmsberg or any other center back that the Fire might get into the offseason. Now, the reason I say I like him a little bit more personally, and if any of you follow me on Twitter or Facebook, you saw some of the pictures. My father-in-law is Danish, and he had his cousin and her family in town from Denmark, and they wanted to go see a Chicago Fire match. They were asking me how Salquist is doing. They're big soccer fans over in Denmark, and I said, yeah, Salquist, he's been hurt a lot of the season. It's hard to evaluate him, but, he could develop into a good player for the Fire. That was kind of what I said. They're like, okay. I reached out to a couple people who I knew in the Fire organization. I said, look, how great would it be, not just for my extended family, but for the player to see people from his home country in Chicago supporting him? And the Fire organization was like, hey, that would be great. If we could organize a meet and greet, but it's Leagues Cup. It's not MLS. We don't have any control over that. So there's nothing we can do to help you out. So kudos to my ticket rep, to the community relations director for being receptive to that idea, and for the Fire organization to having that mentality of doing things like that for the fans. It's fantastic to hear that they were receptive, that they would have tried to make it work. But they said it's Leagues Cup. We don't have the same access or control over the players. There's different security measures around that, so that's why we couldn't pull it off. But what I will say is, so my father-in-law's nephew now, his cousin's son, who is this 6'5", 16-year-old, who I keep telling him, hit the weight room and keep playing soccer in Denmark, man. We'll sign you. We'll bring you over here to play center back. I'm sure there's an MLS team or a next pro team or a USL team that could use you. Come on over. Let's do it. Heck, I'll be his agent. I'll have to go get licensed for that. But and we were laughing about that. He thought it'd be fun. But he goes up behind the bench with a few minutes left in the game. Somehow he gets Salquist's attention. After Salquist goes out to shake hands with the Toluca players, comes right back over I'll call it my cousin, comes back right over to my cousin and they're just talking in Danish to each other. And it blew the mind of all the fans and all the Spanish speakers and everybody else who's there just to look over and see Salquist is speaking Danish to this kid. It was really kind of a little mini culture shock within that area of the stadium. And Salquist says, hey, meet me outside after the game. And sure enough, he gets to meet my father-in-law's family, gets to meet my father-in-law's nephew. They get to talk a little bit. He said, what are you doing in Chicago? And, it was kind of a funny conversation. What are these Danes doing in Chicago? And, where are you from back home? They made some connections. It was really great. Salquist took pictures, gave him his game jersey. And so I have much more respect now and really want to see Salquist succeed because of kind of the personal little touch that he did for fans of his, right? Not just an obligation for people or something set up by the club, but he took the time out to do it, and kudos to him. And for that reason, amongst many others, I'd love to see him succeed with the Chicago Fire. Now, at halftime on the show, we take our water break, and I want to recognize our sponsor, Skira Icelandic Spring Water. Icelandic for clear. Skira water comes from a spring in a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland with naturally low mineral content. This isn't your average water. Clearly, pun intended, it's one of the best. And Skira Icelandic Spring Water is available at your local 7-Eleven. Also, I do believe Tobias Salquist did go on loan to a club in Iceland for a little bit, I think. I'll have to verify. I'll check out on Wikipedia. But anyway, let's transition into the second half of the show. Getting away from the Chicago Fire. Now that they've been eliminated from Leagues Cup, their next match will be August 24th away to New York City. And their next home match is the following weekend against Inter Miami and the Jason Derulo concert. But I wanted to leave the show with a few thoughts on the U.S. men's Olympic soccer team here. They made it to their first Olympic knockout rounds since 2000. And then promptly lost to Morocco, 4-0. 4-0 loss to Morocco in the quarterfinals. Now, I'll admit, I didn't watch that game. I haven't watched a lot of the men's soccer team or a lot of the Olympics in general. I've been really just focused on work, trying to get things done before we leave for our family trip. But so pardon my ignorance on this, but the U.S. gave up 3 goals in their opening game to France. They gave up 4 goals in their knockout round matchup to Morocco. Yes, they beat New Zealand 4-1. Yes, they beat Guinea 2-0. And I did say, it's still the Olympics. These are still quality sides, but they should be beating New Zealand and Guinea. The measuring stick are France and Morocco. Also, the American center backs, Miles Robinson, Walker Zimmerman. Yeah, I don't know. Did they start? Did they play the whole game? I didn't get a chance to watch it all. But even so, those are your overage players. Those are senior men's national team players. Those are World Cup, Gold Cup, CONCACAF Nations League, been around. Those are those kind of guys. For them to give up 7 goals in an opening match and a knockout match does not instill much confidence in me going forward for the men's national team. These are the guys who are supposed to pass on what they've learned and pass on these positive experiences to the next generation. Or at least just play good soccer. Now, I know Schulte had a really bad tournament in net. I know Mihailovic, other than the New Zealand game, did not have a good tournament. And from what I was reading, he played really, really sloppy in this game against Morocco. And maybe the tactics weren't there. The offense couldn't keep some possession to help alleviate some of the pressure on the defense. I think Morocco kind of smelled blood in the water and just went all in that second half. And they scored at least 2, maybe 3 goals in that second half. So there was a lot of factors that go into it. But one of the takeaways, just again, by looking at score lines, by looking at the roster construction, I am not real confident in the American center back pool going forward. You look at Copa America, look at the Olympics. I always liked Zimmerman and Robinson. I thought those were the 2 best center backs, at least since the last World Cup. But maybe injuries and minutes have caught up with them. Maybe just the age of dominant center backs is over in the global game, especially when you have limited training time. The offense usually beats defense in those situations, right? So that's just some of my thoughts. That I'm worried for the American defense going into World Cup qualifying, quote unquote, since we've automatically qualified as the host country. But also, I'm just kind of worried about things going forward. I wish Mihailovic would have had a better tournament and had a better performance against Morocco. That's a guy who had been trying to break into the senior team, first team, who'd been trying to make it in Europe, and maybe we projected him further than his actual play was going to take him. I still like him as a player. I still think he can do great things in Major League Soccer. He's doing well for Colorado. Hopefully get his head right from this tournament and continue to play well for the Rapids. But those are just some thoughts, again, looking at observations, general reading, as some of my worries about the U.S. men's national team going forward. So with that, I will leave you all to enjoy your weekends, to enjoy your weeks. Enjoy the Leagues Cup matchups that are out there, or if you want to take a break like the Fire do, put your feet back up, relax, enjoy whatever the Olympics has to offer. And when I get back from my trip, we will catch up. I hope to see a lot of you over at the Miami matchup on August 31st. And with that, let's go Fire.